I stand behind transparency and clarity. I'm a literal relationship clarity coach. So it did not feel aligned with my values to do this huge shift and not tell you why and tell you what happened.
Welcome to Heartbreak to Wholeness, the podcast helping you heal from the mindfuck of narcissistic relationships and move towards the secure, peaceful woman you want to become. We will explore all of the tools that you need to get through your grief, to move past those I'll be alone forever fears, and rebuild your confidence so you can move forward in healthy relationships as your full self, never to get sucked into the narcissistic spell again. I am your host, Bree Walta, relationship clarity coach and EFT certified practitioner. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to this episode. This is an exciting one-off bonus episode where I'm going to share a little bit about the behind the scenes of the rebrand of the podcast. So if you'll notice, the podcast shifted from Lucid Living with Bree, Learn to Live and Love Awake was the old title, and it has shifted to Heartbreak to Wholeness, healing from the mindfuck of narcissistic relationships so you can find peace and move towards healthy love. And I'm really excited about this shift. I feel a little nervous and a little vulnerable of sharing more of my thought process around the reasoning for the shift and sort of my evolution as a coach and as a business owner and all of the things. But you guys are so important to me. And of course, the whole entire reason that I do this podcast is for you. So specifically, those of you that have been with me for a long time, you're like the OGs, and everybody deserves that clarity and that explanation. So that's what we're going to do today. So I started thinking about this podcast. I'm coming up on maybe 6 months or so of having done this, and I love it. I love the podcast so much. Having quality conversations with people and being able to share really in-depth wisdom with you is such an honor. And I love it so much that I want it to continue to grow. And as I was looking at the downloads and the statistics and all of the boring back-end analytics stuff, I'm like, why is it not growing in the trajectory that I feel like I'm putting in the effort to film these episodes and to find the guests and to bring you really good content? And I was like, I don't know, I'll just keep trying and maybe something will shift, right? It was very much that stick your head in the sand and kind of keep doing what you're doing, hoping you'll get a different result, like literally Einstein's definition of insanity. So I came to the point where I needed help, and doing things by myself has been my default. Growing up, I learned how to be really self-sufficient. I learned how to be really responsible, not have to rely on other people. I was the one that was always doing and taking care of. And that's a safe place for me. So part of my stepping out into asking for help around the podcast and like, what am I doing that's not working, or what could I be doing better to optimize listeners, was a big step for me. And I've talked about this in different ways through my emails and through my social media about different moments when I've asked for help in my business journey, in my owning a business journey. And each time that little part of me comes back and is like, no, we don't need to spend this money. We don't need help. This isn't going to work anyway. How are we going to know that what we're going to get is going to be worth it? Right? All of the justification for staying in the familiar place that's not working. It's not working, but it's comfortable because it's familiar. Every time I step out and I ask for help, I am shocked at my ability to continue to grow and to evolve and to make the change that I am trying to make. So we don't know what we don't know. And when we can bring on somebody to help us that has been through it and can help guide us through it, that's how we get to new places. I'm still working with myself in this like really seeing coaches and people and those in the helping position as such an asset instead of potentially like feeling shame or embarrassed around needing help. So I hired a coaching team. They're helping me to really nail in the vision, nail in the messaging. And, when I started, I was doing the best with what I had. So I wanted you to learn to live and love awake. That was the intention of the episodes. And as I went farther into this process, I'm like, there's so much more space for me to get really clear on what that means so that it resonates more with the people who are listening. So that was part of why really getting detailed about the title and the subtitle and the new cover art was really important, because I want this message to reach as many women as possible who are in this place of mindfuckery around being in a narcissistic relationship and who are looking for support in learning more about narcissism and learning how to move through that heartbreak and how to find peace. Because when you're in those narcissistic relationships, it is utter chaos. And if this podcast can bring you some wisdom and information and a sense of like, oh, okay, I'm not alone, and maybe I know a next step forward, like, yeah, that is what this podcast is intended to do. So talking about healing from these relationships, these narcissistic relationships, this mindfuckery is so near to my heart. This is the soul work that I'm doing with clients. I've very much niched down into just working with women who have been through something that doesn't make sense, where they've lost themselves, where they want to really understand what happened and shift their relational patterns so that they can move towards healthy love. And it's so close to my heart because I've been through it. So getting to have conversations with people when I do interview episodes about their stories and bringing light to their experience and their strength and their empowerment is so fulfilling to me. If you haven't listened to episode 10, it's where I share my story. It's like an hour episode of my story. It's called Waking Up from a Toxic Relationship Nightmare, Rebuilding My Confidence and Stepping into Real Love. So check out episode 10 after this one if you're interested in the full debrief of what happened. But in general, like being able to really, really nail in on these specific things that you want to hear, that you are struggling with, that you need help around, just makes so much sense. And again, I don't know if I would have really pieced all these things together if I didn't have somebody guiding me through that process. I also feel like now that I'm sort of looking at how the podcast originated, the content has always been the stories of women who have been through narcissistic relationships and trying to provide a sense of togetherness in that if you're in that experience too, so that you don't feel alone. But I was kind of playing small, I think, and not naming that was what the podcast was about. So, and I have so much compassion for this part of myself that really has this drive and this desire to be helpful in this capacity, but didn't quite want to name it, like kind of wanted people to find it through the back door, potentially. And now I'm in a different place professionally where I really feel confident taking up intentional space about the knowledge and the skills that I have to share. So that is, for me, something just so cool to pause on for a minute and to be really proud of, because putting the word narcissistic in the title kind of implies, at least to me, like you should know what you're talking about. And I do. I do know what I'm talking about. I've lived it. I have studied it. I feel like I'm very much well-versed in this subject and have a lot to share, a lot of beneficial information that I use with my clients, that I've learned from my clients, and that I want to bring to you. So not a ton is going to change with the type of episodes that you're going to hear. There will continue to be interview episodes where I will interview women who have been through some sort of mindfuckery, narcissistic experience, and we'll share how they came to the other side. So you can kind of see where they were, how they hit that change point, and then how they made that shift into peace and into finding that final, healthy relationship that they never thought was possible. There will also be interviews of professionals So different therapists or different types of modalities that I think are really interesting to incorporate into your healing journey, things I think that will be beneficial. And then the new piece is we're going to start doing more shorter knowledge-based episodes for you to really learn about narcissism and manipulation, tips and strategies to really heal when you've gone through a heartbreak, when you can't really see a way forward, better understanding the psychology around heartbreak and why we want to go back, how you can intentionally work on your traumas and patterning so that you're not bringing that into your next relationship, and just more useful information on how to move towards healthy love, how to move towards that place that you really want to be. And then at the end of every episode, like we've been doing, we're going to maintain that oracle card pull, because I know all of my spiritual babes out there love that message. If you're not familiar with what an oracle card pull is, it's a deck of cards. Each card has a picture that's associated with a message in the book. And I shuffle until a card pulls out, or until the guest intuitively tells me when to stop shuffling on behalf of the listener. And we read the card. We read what the message is. And it's just an invitation of something that you can stay mindful of that week, something that will help you stay really present and conscious with yourself and in your healing or in your relationship. So it's a cool message from the universe, as it be. I think that's it. That's all the kind of like important pieces that about the shift and the name and what's included and all the things. I still feel vulnerable. I know I ask clients and I relay deeply how important vulnerability is. And even as I'm here sort of standing in this change and standing in this shift, this intentional shift that I'm making, it still feels scary. It feels scary to do something new. It feels scary to think about how people will receive it. And if you're in that place, in any sort of parallel in your life where you've just done something new, where you've just sort of put yourself out there, where you've just used your voice potentially for the first time, I just want to normalize, like, that is such a common human experience. So whenever we go into a new place, it's inherently unpredictable. It's inherently something that we haven't like mastered yet, quote unquote. Like we've mastered our patterns and we've mastered our safe places that we've kept ourselves in. So when you step out, you are being so courageous. And I guess I need to hear this message too, which is why it's coming through this time. But it is courageous to do something new and different, and specifically to align yourself with something that feels more true to you now. So when I started the podcast, like I wasn't really aware that I was playing small. I loved the name. I loved the concept. And that's what felt true for me in that moment. And it's like honoring the evolution of the journey to be able to say, okay, so that doesn't feel quite true anymore. Based on how I've grown and based on what I am doing now, like this feels more true. And there's so much permission to continue to evolve and continue to change. And 6 months from now, there might be another rebrand. I don't know. We're leaving all things open, because when we can stay more open and less rigid around how things should look, how we should look, and we just continue to make these tiny little like micro pivots into more of our authentic self, more of our true self, so much beauty will come from that. I really, truly believe that. So for you, for me, receiving that message, receiving that wisdom, and just to know that whenever you listen back to any episode previous to this one, if I mention the podcast by the name of Lucid Living with Bree, you're not at the wrong place. You're just in the before place. So from here forward, it will be Heartbreak to Wholeness that you hear and you see. And I encourage you to go back and listen to episode 10 about my story, to take a little look-see-poo around what of the topics that I've covered so far feel like they have that heart pull to you. And always reach out. I love hearing from my listeners on information that could be helpful, topics that you want me to cover, I'm so open to it. This is for you, from me, and I want it to be beneficial and useful in all of those ways. So I'll link everything in the show notes, including how to reach out to me, and I'll see you in the next rebranded episode.